Cincinnati Bengals are selecting in the number 17 position in the 2025 NFL draft, and they have several picks after that as well that Ryan and we are going to review as we're doing our first 2025 three-round mock draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to break it down here for you in a second, but before we do that, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tackle that bell, and leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you think of this draft and what you would want the Bengals to do in the comments down below. Ryan, let's pull up the slide deck here. So we did a full three-round mock draft, all 100 or so picks, and you can see who we selected there. A couple of picks before and after, and another couple potential options as well that we'll break down here. So we ended up going with Tyleik Williams here. This is a player I really like out of Ohio State, and I think a lot of people just like him in general. You just go watch his film. He never seems like he loses in one-on-one matchups. He just seems like he's always at minimum a draw, or he's getting into the backfield and blowing up the play. And I think that's something that the Bengals really need as well. They had one of the worst defenses last year. And new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, I think is going to have a very similar type setup. And so I could see him going with a bigger edge rusher if someone like Nick Scorton falls or if Nick Scorton's there. This is where he's about to fall up. Shamar Stewart maybe could be one. Shamar Stewart might be a little too big. Actually, he's basically a defensive tackle. But I think a guy like Tyleik Williams is going to come in there, keep him in state. I think he'd be a great compliment to Tre Hendrickson. But just in general, I just think just trying to get just better players for the Cincinnati Bengals defense is the priority for this team.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me was a lot of their struggles. They started just because they couldn't stop the run, and they had to allocate more guys into the box, and then that put them at a numbers disadvantage in the secondary. And so there were a lot of things going on, I think, and a lot of it started up front with this Bengals defense. And if they can slow the run and they can actually keep some games in reach later on instead of losing multiple games after scoring 30 plus points on offense, I think that's really going to do them well. And
Yeah.
I think with Tyleik Williams, he comes in, he's a day one starter at defensive tackle, and it'll really kind of short things up. They could go a few other routes. They could go on the back end of the defense with Malachi Starks and get kind of a Jesse Bates replacement, just because that back end has struggled a little bit since he's been gone. Invest in the interior of that offensive line with like a Tyler Booker. Gray Zabel is a very popular name right now coming off of the Senior Bowl. Or you could go and get like a younger, much better version of Mike Gesicki in Colston Loveland, because Joe Burrow and Mike Gesicki had a really solid connection there throughout the season. So there's a lot of really good options, I think, for the Bengals at this point. This is like 10-1 or 15-1 in this draft, or like that is kind of like the more like true first round guys. But from 15 to like 50, there's just not a big difference in my opinion in like the true talent of a lot of these players. They're all in very similar tiers in my eyes.
Yeah, it's I really don't think there's a wrong pick that they could go, even if they wanted to go with the receiver here, like Emeka Egbuka or Luther Bird or something like that. Like if they end up losing T Higgins, but trying to bring in like another dynamic playmaker, I could see them going like down that route and being like, you know what, like that's like I can see that. And so moving on now to their second round pick, they end up selecting Azareye'h Thomas. He had a solid Pro Bowl and helped out his case a lot as well. And I think a team like Cincinnati, once again, kind of as you talked about as well, in the last slide, it just really struggled in the secondary, just in general. Like Tre Hendrickson was really just kind of like the one good thing just looking back at last year's season, which is kind of wild. It just show you how bad this defense was with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tre Hendrickson, the season that those three guys had. And yeah, like this defense was that bad and ruined it for all of them. And part of it was just their coaching, their secondary just wasn't playing well. And a guy like Azareye'h Thomas, I think, can come in and start to change some things and kind of change the dynamic for this program.
Yeah, I like this player a lot. The one thing I don't like is how his name is actually enunciated. So I've thought it was Azareye'h Thomas this whole time. Apparently, it's like Azareye'h Thomas. So I don't know. That's confusing. But a really big corner.
I'm going to mess that. I apologize. Just in the future, like I will.
Yeah,
mess that
yeah. Azareye'h Thomas. I think so. He's a big lanky corner out of Florida State. Really good in man situations, and I think if you come in there, he can definitely learn zone. He has some good zone tape, but I think he's going to come in. He's going to be a big physical corner that their teams are going to struggle with. I think, and he showed that down at the Senior Bowl when he's given an assignment, he can definitely execute it at a pretty high level. And I think this is a really good landing spot for him. He's going to come in and be utilized right away and be put into a situation where he's going to kind of have to learn as you go. But I think he is the type of player that is going to do well there. They
Mhm.
could go again a few other ways. Derek Harmon, if they don't go defensive tackle in the first round, I think would be an interesting one. Get Trey Hendrickson a running mate there, and Landon Jackson, the edge rusher from Arkansas. And then if they want to go get another receiver, if T. Higgins does leave in free agency, there are a few guys they could get. The one that piqued my interest the most was Jalen Royals, more of like a true slot option, but a really good guy that gets a lot of yards after catch when the ball's in his hands and whatnot there. So just a lot of, again, another good spot where like I feel like they're getting guys like right at the end or right at the beginning of a tier of players where they're able to capitalize on somebody that might fall.
Yeah, yeah. And so, moving on to their final pick here in the 3-round mock, end up going with Tre Harris, receiver out of Ole Miss. And this is a very interesting guy. I feel like people are very polarized on him because I think people really like his athleticism, but then at the same time, the two people question about like his route running, his route tree overall. But I think getting him here in the 3rd round, and I think with his overall athleticism, I think the Bengals can absolutely work with him and develop him overall, even if they keep T. Higgins. I think that that'd be very interesting because Ryan, I know like he's got the specs. What's the phrase you like to say? The height, weight, speed kind of guy.
Yeah, he is a height, weight, speed kind of guy. My biggest concern is that he's a 24-year-old prospect who has some injury concerns. But with that being said, the production is there. He has more build-up speed rather than explosiveness. But guys like Mike Evans have had Hall of Fame careers with that type of skill set. And so I think he's a really interesting prospect who, if put in the right situation, could come into an NFL situation and be successful. And I think the Bengals would be a good one because you have Jamar Chase, who kind of does a little bit of everything. You have Andre Yoshivas, who is a little bit more of like that slot, like kind of over the middle guy. You have some other good weapons as well. Chase Brown had a good, I believe, sophomore season in the NFL. And so all in all, like I think this would be a really good complement to the receiving room that they already have. Who is the kid that they got from Alabama this past season?
Jermaine
Um,
Burton.
Jermaine Burton. They kind of play a similar role. Jermaine Burton is a little bit more explosive, but Tre Harris is more physically dominant. And so I think that's going to be something just to kind of keep an eye on. And if T. Higgins does leave, this is a good 3rd-round replacement.
Yeah, it's the Bengals. I think it's. I wish I could see into the future. Then I would get the lottery tickets. And so I'm looking into the future here now for the Bengals draft. I don't think the Bengals can have a bad draft this year. If you go look at what the Bengals really struggle with, and it's just pretty much the trenches. Well, it's trenches and then defensive side of the ball. So I guess the vast majority of other roster has problems, and that's the strength I think of this draft is like there's a lot of really good defensive talent that I think they can go after. There's also pretty deep, I would say, offensive line talent, especially two in the first 2 days that I think that they can go out and address and find guys that they can fall in love with. And if they're trying to find a receiver to help replace T. Higgins if he does move on, the strength I think of this receiver class is going to be in that mid to late day 2, early day 3, with like the receivers that are there. There's not a clear blue chip guy like Ted McMillan is probably the best guy, or Travis Hunter, I guess, if he comes out as a receiver, is probably clearly the best. But the Bengals, they're looking for just solid, good defensive players. There's plenty of those guys in this draft class. They're looking to help, like keep bolstering up the offensive line. There's plenty of guys that they can go and address in round 2 or round 3. And then same thing as well too when it comes to that receiver position. So this draft is just kind of built for the Bengals. I feel to at minimum like hit a double. Like I think they could really
Yeah.
hit it out of the park, but I feel like they're just going to hit a double in this draft
Yeah.
class, unless if they draft like a quarterback and then they draft like Cam Scatterbo with like in the 1st round. Like that's bad. I don't think they will do that. That's bad. So, but I think if they go edge rusher that they really like in the 1st round, a cornerback that they really like in the 2nd round, a receiver or a defensive tackle spot in the 3rd round, like a CJ West kind of guy, a big Indiana fan. I like CJ West a lot. I think he'd be great in Cincinnati. But like
Yeah.
that right there, I think would be like good first 3 picks to help fixing this team and fixing this defensive problem. So who knows? I'm not a fortune teller. Otherwise, I'd be super rich right now, and you guys wouldn't be hearing me talk on the internet. And so, but I just think the Bengals are going to do well this draft. It's just because it really fits their needs.
Yeah, and that's now that like we kind of talk this out and we go through this, it reminds me a little bit of like the Houston Texans, where like, okay, the Bengals they have their edge rusher, they have their top wide receiver, they have actually 2 tackles with if Amarius Mims can stay healthy, they have their quarterback, like they have all these pieces, but they don't have anybody to come in and like be the supporting cast
Yeah,
in that group, and that's exactly what I think this draft is. Is these are a lot of the guys that are going to do a lot of the dirty work and really kind of pole vault teams above and beyond and let their stars really go and make plays. So I think it's a good draft for the Bengals. They would be wise to follow our advice and maybe bring us in as consultants, I guess. So
that would be
uh,
great.
yeah. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap it up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. Let us know what you thought of this Bengals 3-round mock draft down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.